to just kind of see it in your head before you're doing it, so that as you're working on it, you're anticipating what you're going to be doing on the back end. A lot of you have asked about doing some videos on marker work, hand colored work, and so I got a very cool piece to show you here. It was a commission that was given to me a few years ago. I'm going to talk about decisions I make, how I go about it, the products that I use for it. This will be a multimedia piece, meaning that I'm going to use more than one medium, so markers, some pencil, a little bit of white ink. The markers that I use is Olo marker. It is a fairly new product, more efficient than any other marker. They have an ink delivery system that uses up to 90% of the ink inside the cartridge. And what I've done is I've actually put two different colors on mine. And so I have the highlight color on one side and the shade of it on the other. Anyway, we're gonna start with kind of a central character in the composition. It's Huntress. It will be different than the piece that was published. I'd never like to replicate my work. I tend to use or do the skin tones first, especially on characters that show a lot of skin, and that's, again, it's the hardest, one of the hardest things to render, because we all know what skin looks like, and so we know when it's off. It's very easy to tell when that's happened. I want to make sure that I capture that part of each character properly. As I brush towards the highlight, and so you can kind of see the marker. I move it in the direction of where the highlight's going to hit. I am leaving some areas white right now, and that's because I'm going to hit them with a little bit of an even brighter highlight, a lighter color, if you will. You'll see that I'm leaving some white also towards the edges, and that's where the reflective lighting is going to play a big part. It works real well and complements what Jim and Scott do in their artwork, and so I have to incorporate that into my rendering. With paper, I have to anticipate that and leave it white, because I can't go back and lighten over a darker color. All right, so that's it for the first color. Here it comes with the shadow of that color, creating a little bit of that core shadow. And again, going from dark to light, my brush strokes move towards the light, and that's why using these brush tips work so well with this, and that they respond to the amount of pressure that I put on them as I render. And so again, I'm pressing down hard initially, and as I move towards the light, I let go of that pressure, and that brush tip diminishes in size, and also less ink pours out of the marker because of it. Especially lately in the comics, they've been using a little bit of a darker skin tone on her, and so I'm definitely bringing that in here and taking it into account as I'm selecting colors. All right, now we'll go ahead and grab that much lighter highlight. If you're asking yourself where this particular piece came from, IDW released the Jim Lee, the artist edition. I think it's a Batman artist edition, and so it features a lot of his covers and his interior work from Batman. A little bit of touch up, make sure that the shadows and the highlights work well before I move on to the next part of her outfit. Let's do her hair. And look at that, I forgot to do her ear, so we gotta come back and do that. That actually happens more than you think it would, where you render a whole page and you look back and you're like, whoops, I forgot that dude's hand. So same with this, especially since I don't get to zoom in and out like I would in, say, in Photoshop or Procreate. There's so much little detail into every drawing, especially when Jim and Scott are involved. That stuff just tends to get past me sometimes. There's going to be some touch-up being done with colored pencils too, like I mentioned, and that even though I'm coloring areas that should be a little bit lighter maybe, I'm still going to come back with the pencil and address those. Hair's ready. Here we go with the costume. Let's do the light blue parts first. So with all these white parts, I need to leave some of these areas just white, but we also want to make sure that we're immersing the character in the environment, and so there will be a lot of, like I mentioned, touching up on the back, and that'll tie that in. It's a little bit harder to do, like I said, marker or even colored pencil, because you need to just kind of see it in your head before you're doing it, so that as you're working on it, you're anticipating what you're going to be doing on the back end. But again, brush strokes towards the light, shadow to light. Very complex costume. Want to make sure that everything's done correctly. So I'm working on this. I'm finding that the paper really absorbs the ink, and so I have to lighten my touch a little bit more than I'm used to. Used to working on like on a Bristol kind of paper, and that's nice thicker stock that holds the ink and absorbs it a little better without bleeding. And so this one's bleeding a little bit more than I'd like it to, but it's no problem as I'm just adjusting my touch now and the amount of ink that I'm laying down. Since this is a dark tunic, there's no really white highlight that I have to worry about, and so I'm making sure I take this to a blue, and so that'll sell the white parts of her costume as being white. And I'm gonna add a little bit of gray to the shading. Right, and now, so she's got this kind of violet and purple thing going with her cape, and I'm going to use two different kinds of these colors because of the material. So the cloth is going to get the more saturated color, and the metal is going to have the more grayish version of that color. On the computer, you have these unlimited palettes, and you can do whatever to help create those differences. And when you move to the actual paper, these colors, I'm obviously going to mix here and there as well. I want to avoid as much of the mixing as possible, mostly because of the paper issue that I mentioned. So I just want to make sure that the paper doesn't get oversaturated. When you have these large spaces, you definitely want, a marker that's going to have a great ink delivery system, so that you're not having to refill your marker 15 times because of something like this. All right, and you can see I'm following the contours of the cape. We're gonna get a little bit of a streak here with the marker, just because of the nature of the way I'm coloring it. What's cool about it is that the little streaks will almost help make it look like the rendering. The fact that they're alcohol markers, you're able to kind of pick up a little bit of the color below it and use it to render it and blend it out. So even though it looks a little rough as I'm laying down that darker shadow, blending it in is what's really going to help. I decided to do her character too because she's probably the most difficult one on here. Once I finish it, I know that the rest of the book will kind of go a little bit easier, and so if I get to the hardest scene first, it means that on the back end the work will be easier, especially as to the end of the deadline. Sometimes you're a little tired, and so knowing that you don't have to tackle the hardest thing helps a ton. All right, so I'm gonna go back and correct some of the errors, like the hair. Right, and the ear, and the tunic. All right, and now we're gonna go for the armor. And I'm gonna do some playing around with it. Maybe something that I wish I'd tried initially, but so I'm gonna kind of Maybe make it a little bit more reflective and shiny. That's what's kind of cool about taking commissions like this. You get to try stuff out that you didn't even think of until after, or you were even afraid to, you know. Just because we've been doing this for 30 plus years doesn't mean that we don't look at a piece and it's still, sometimes they scare us. It's like, okay, I really have to nail this because the art on it is just so spot on, so good. It's a little bit of stage fright as far as like, all right, now I gotta really nail this sucker. So you'll see that this particular purple is less saturated and does a nice way of contrasting with the purple that's in the tunic too. And so the difference in saturation and value help pop one from the other. Kind of blend this in a little bit so that there's a nicer transition to the white, because I'm going to leave some of these parts white. That's just I'm kind of following the highlight. All right, with the marker stuff done, we're gonna come in and now do a little bit of touch up with pencil, just to kind of blend some things in, make the transitions a little bit better. I like to use Derwent products for colored pencil work. This is the Derwent Ink Tense. The color's a little bit more intense than normal. And so I'm just gonna add a little bit of the shading and transition it into the color. Drawing the highlight towards the highlight, right? Since I'm working with one of these shade colors. And then we're gonna level up the colors a little bit. Just wanna make sure that we get a nice proper color gradient here. What's great about these Intense pencils is that they're also water soluble. And so if you want to take a water brush after you're done the rendering, you can give them that nice, really cool watercolor effect, right? We're gonna do a little bit of the grayish purple here. And again, just to give it a little bit more depth in the shadows. Since it's metal, I want to, you know, definitely make it have a little bit more contrast. Add some of this shading here. There's a lot of flesh, B, metal, and cloth, and I'm assuming these pouches are leather or canvas, and so, you know, you got them one right next to the other, and so you gotta make sure that you account for all these textures and materials and make sure that they look different next to each other. I'm gonna come in with a little bit of white. Okay, I also like to use these jelly rolls, are great for highlights. They work great for metal, and that it allows you to kind of give some nice little, really thin highlights throughout the metallic parts. Let's put a little bit of highlights on her eyeballs there, and the marker bled into her eye, so I'm gonna make sure that that comes back. Same with her teeth, her lips, and then the hair, throw in a couple little highlight streaks. The only thing that's left is really the reflective light, and that I'm gonna put in at the end, and that I still haven't decided on what color I'm gonna throw back there, but I've left those openings for myself to be able to come in and throw them in there. But that's essentially how you get like the character done with the marker like this. We're gonna continue this video series as I work through coloring some of these maybe next time. Thanks for watching.